I just want your opinion on, do you think Ben Bernanke is going to be happy that he'll remove the moniker of saying the stupidest thing ever by a Fed chairman, which was subprime was going to be complained, and to take that mantle, Jay Powell, inflation is going to be transitory. Do you think Ben Bernanke is like, because that is the dumbest thing, because it's a bigger problem.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's understands that that's the case. He probably thinks it's transitory. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that that statement will go down as a far bigger policy blunder than the contained. And I know what's interesting about the Ben Bernanke subprime is contained, because I remember listening to an interview with Ben Bernanke. I think it was on Motley Fool Radio. And they played him clips of him saying that subprime is contained. Nothing to worry about, everything's great, right? And so the host of the radio show asked Ben Bernanke, hey, how does it make you feel? You know, you're listening to this, you were so totally wrong, right? You couldn't have been more wrong, right? You're saying everything is great, and we're right around the corner from this huge disaster. I mean, clearly you couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, how does it feel to listen to it, right? Knowing how wrong you were, right? And so instead of saying, yeah, I feel like a complete idiot, God, I really missed that, right? That's not what he said. What his answer was, well, you know, I couldn't exactly speak my mind. I couldn't exactly be honest because I was a member of the administration.
Wow.
And so, you know, I kind of had to toe the party line. And so, you know, I couldn't just come out and say how bad it was. You know, so I wasn't really that wrong, right? I mean, I guess I had all these political pressures. And I was like, oh my God, why isn't this major news? Basically, he admitted that he lied because he wanted to put spin on it. He wanted to pretend that things were better than they were. And I think, you know, the Federal Reserve, these guys are always concerned about psychology, right? And so the way these guys work is they don't want to start the problem themselves, right? So if the Fed is worried about a recession, they never want to say, hey, we think a recession is coming, because they're afraid that those statements will cause the recession. Because the minute the Fed says, hey, we think a recession is coming, now they're worried about businesses saying, oh my God, a recession is coming. I better not hire these people. I better not make this investment, right? I better be cautious because there's a recession coming. And the Fed is afraid that people's preparations for a recession is going to bring on the very recession that they're worried about. So they want to pretend that there's not going to be a recession and hope that maybe it doesn't happen. But of course, if people prepared for a recession in advance, it wouldn't be as bad. It's when you're blindsided by the recession and you have to unwind all the bad decisions that you've made that exacerbates it. But I think the same thing is happening now. I think there's a very good chance that Jerome Powell knows that inflation isn't transitory. But the last thing he could do is admit that it's not transitory. Because if the Fed admits that we have an inflation problem, well, then they have to solve it. But because it's unsolvable, because the Fed has created a situation where we can't fight inflation because we have too much debt, and fighting inflation would create a problem that the Fed believes is even worse than inflation. It would create an economic implosion. I think Powell is doing exactly what Ben Bernanke did. And Ben Bernanke thought he was a member of the Bush administration, because when he told that Motley Fool host, hey, I was a member of the administration, he meant the George Bush administration. Well, wait a minute. I thought the Fed is supposed to be independent. You're not supposed to just be parroting what the administration wants to say. You're not supposed to think of yourself as a member of the administration. Well, if Ben Bernanke thought he was a member of the Bush administration, I'm sure Powell thinks he's a member of the Biden administration, especially since Janet Yellen, his former boss or whatever, I mean, although that was before he got there, but the former FOMC chairman is the Secretary of the Treasury. I mean, obviously, he's totally on board with this Biden administration. And so I think he's going to say the same thing. He's just going to say inflation is transitory, even though he believes it may not be. But I guess he's going to hope, because maybe Ben Bernanke was really worried about the subprime market, but he was hoping that by diminishing it, maybe it would be okay, right? Maybe things would blow over, maybe a miracle will happen. So I'm just going to keep on saying everything is okay, and I'm just going to hope and pray that a miracle happens and I end up being right. And so maybe that's the exact same thing they're doing now. They're just praying for a miracle that inflation just happens to be transitory. But if you understand anything about economics and inflation, where it comes from, you realize that it's not transitory at all. In fact, the only thing that we're transitioning from is to an era of permanently high inflation.
They have to know, and if they don't know, the result's the same, but they have to know this is going to blow up, right? And even if they don't know this is going to blow up, this is going to blow up, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, the thing is, there's nothing they can do about it, because they can't stop it from blowing up, because that's the cure to the problem. It has to blow up. But, they can't let it blow up, because that exposes the problem. But, what's going to happen is eventually we're going to have this collapse, and they're just going to be looking for scapegoats, and, they're going to try to figure out who they're going to blame. And what I think is going to happen, and I thought this was going to happen years ago, and I turned out to be premature, because I did not realize that we would be able to kick the can down the road for as many years as we did, and we could print this much money, and foreigners would be willing to, just recycle it all into our stock market, and we could run these huge trade deficits and not have to suffer the consequences of this monetary policy. Well, we're going to suffer them now to a much greater degree, because during the years that we kicked the can down the road, the problems got so much bigger, the bubble got so much bigger. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see price controls. Just like Richard Nixon in 1971 imposed price controls. It didn't work, of course, because you're trying to cover up the symptoms of inflation rather than doing anything about the inflation itself.
Made it worse. They made it worse.
But I mean, right now, see, people are talking about shortages, right? There's shortages of stuff. Well, of course there's a shortage of stuff, because there's a surplus of money. I mean, whenever you print a lot of money and give it to people, well, they want to buy stuff. Well, the problem is this stuff's not there because nobody made it. I mean, the government can print money. There's no limit to how much they can print, but they can't print goods, right? They can't print purchasing power. That has to be produced by the private sector. So if you have all these people with government money looking to buy stuff, especially when they're not even working, you have all these people who used to work and help produce goods and provide services, not working at all, with actually more money to buy goods and services, even though they didn't do anything to help produce them. So of course, the government says there's a shortage. It's not a shortage of stuff, it's a surplus of money. And so the next thing that's going to happen is the price of everything is going to have to go up, and then there won't be a shortage anymore, because people won't be able to afford to buy the stuff. They want to buy it now because the prices are low. But once the prices respond to all the money printing, then it won't necessarily be a shortage. But what is going to produce shortages is going to be price controls. Because what's going to happen is when the government starts to see the price of everything going up, right, across the board, consumer goods, the government is going to try to blame those greedy businesses for jacking up prices, for gouging the consumers, for exploiting people. And so they're going to try to find a way to attack the symptoms, which are the price increases. So they're going to impose limits. And what that's going to do is create big shortages.